trigger happy and I give less than a fuck. Love me or hate me, I'ma show enough, rip shit up. It's Mr. Nothing, nice on a mic stand. Mic in the left and the zest in my right hand. I took a puff, had enough now, hold up. If that was Indo, niggas getting rolled up.
What's going on, folks? This is Acid Roots. I'm going to review the compilation CD by Don Omar, Los Bandoleros. Now, this came out in the spring of 2005 and basically has one of Don Omar's largest songs. But this is basically just a collection of Latin rap songs that kind of, I want to say, like, I don't know if this had like a movie attached to it, but I do know that it basically had, like I was saying, it has one of Don Omar's biggest songs, and this is also a pretty large Latin rap song in general that helped showcase and kind of get Latin rap and that kind of reggaeton type music a lot more forward in, English and United States culture in a lot of ways. And that's pretty awesome just because I definitely feel like Bandoleros is a pretty kick-ass song. It has Tego Calderon, or if you don't know him as well, for like folks that are not immersed in Latin rap, he also collaborated with Cypress Hill a couple times, so Be Real and Send Dog know who he is. And yeah, I would say it's good stuff, and that's definitely kind of the thing here. Is I was kind of the way I listened to the two singles off this project, which is what I'm going to review. I'm going to review the singles, not so much the whole album, but I'm going to review the two Don Omar singles. And I really kind of found myself wishing that there would have been a third one. I definitely would have to say the two brief singles that Don Omar does on here, he definitely gets a pretty scene-stealing song with Bandoleros. It deserves all of the glory that it wound up getting, especially how large it wound up being in Latin rap and crossing over to American territories and that type stuff. But then I would also say that Don Ko was a surprisingly effective sports song that just had a lot of tempo, a lot of pace, a lot of rage, and a lot of just overall great testosterone and like a just kick-ass kind of this berserk kind of format that I wish I would hear a lot more English rappers do. I mean, it was just crazy. You don't just hear someone come out with a song called Dunk and then sit there and kick that much ass with it. It's just not very frequent. Like in America, like maybe someone like Lil Bow Wow would make like a song about basketball, but for the most part, it's not as often as like, just the fact of how easily Don Omar knocked this out of the park was pretty, apt. So that's kind of the situation, but I'll go ahead and talk about like the singles now, and we'll get into like the description of some of these. So Bandoleros, to me, this really feels like an evening song. It really kind of feels like, you've got a beer in your hand, a mug of beer, something like that. This kind of feels like not so much a dance song, but just kind of a more kicking it in the backyard, chillaxing, kind of more of like a mingle, kind of like the party hasn't started yet, or you just got off work. Just feels like a real 5:30 p.m., 6:15 p.m. kind of song. I definitely felt that way. Bandoleros in English means bandits. And when I look up the translation of Bandoleros on Google, it actually says it means the highwaymen, but obviously it would be bandits as in a slang term. But so a couple of the verses on here, Tego Calderon is on here also. He's the guest feature, and he does two verses on this song, actually. So Don Omar's verse, he talks about the charges and the kind of litigation that he's facing at this point in time, and he talks about how they refer to him as a tecato, which is a drug user, and he is no longer seen as like the king of the genre of the music that he's in. He's seen as more of like a user than like a reggaeton champ like he is up to that point, or as he was at that time and such. And then he also asked to not be, he'd appreciate not being judged in the verse, and that's kind of, you can understand that concept, just getting, having charges and having to deal with crap like that and having to essentially defend yourself, and people look at you like you're an enemy and that type of stuff, where it's kind of like, you go from being this heralded person to now people are throwing rocks and stones and they don't like you anymore. And I don't know what sort of charges that Don Omar caught, but it kind of seems, I question, them having to just defend his image and say, a mistake or two and he's out of the picture. So I'm on Don Omar's side, I would have to say. But, then Tego Calderon has a pretty good verse also. He kind of says the same thing, where it's not so much him that's taking the charges, but he's kind of guilty by association. And he says, I am your cuco, which is kind of Spanish slang for boogeyman. And he kind of says, like, we're treated different from politicians. Like, if politicians can get away with things, but if we do the stuff that politicians get away with, they would say it's conspiracy. And I kind of think that that's effectively true. The concept behind it, as far as saying that with politicians, is, the difference is, I understand that now. If I had been like years younger, I would have said, like, well, yeah, that is kind of annoying, but because politicians make the laws and stuff, but they are right. I mean, that's definitely the concept. I feel like Tego Calderon and Don Omar are right, but the only reason why I would think that way is just because they're in suits and that type of stuff, and they're making rules and regulations and laws. That's kind of the thing. But I do get the concept that they shouldn't be so quick to judge and cast them out of the spotlight as quickly as that. But so the second single was Dunk, and this is another Don Omar song. So I definitely love the pace of the song. This is definitely, as of right now, one of my favorite Don Omar songs. He keeps up entirely with Daddy Yankee as far as some of my favorite Latin rap songs at this particular point. And I would definitely have to say that, Don Ko is an excellent song. Love the tempo of it. Love the pacing and the thrill of it. Felt like an easy dance-ready song. Easy kind of booty shaker. Easy kind of party song. Definitely festivities to dance with the chicas and that type stuff, I would have to say. No problem with that. Easy kind of Gasolina and Rompe type song. Just within that kind of format. And yeah, I enjoyed the pace quite a bit. Like the beat. Like the hook. There's really like a point in like the refrain, which is after the verse, where it's not the verse, but it's also not the chorus, but it's kind of like this point where he's saying, like, give me defense, ma, where he says defensa. He has this really nice bridge where he's like, give me defense, ma, give me defense. And it's really catchy. I like the tempo, especially being flirty with a woman while saying it, kind of like, give me defense. It's just pretty slick the way that goes. It definitely adds tempo and energy to the song by doing that, just having that extra kind of refrain in the song that kind of helps push that song along. It's pretty kick-ass. And then I also noticed at least one part in the chorus where he says, I'm the one who kills them in the paint, which is that's interesting, that in terms of talking about like basketball and stuff, that like I kind of felt like going hard in the paint was kind of like a recent term, but to hear that kind of phrase as far back as like 2005 is pretty interesting. To talk about killing them in the paint, I kind of felt like that's a basketball term, but it's interesting to kind of see that. I wonder how long. I mean, obviously it seems like it had been said, but that's pretty interesting that context kind of made that way to, Latin slang too. So it's interesting to kind of say he's the one who kills them in the paint. That's pretty kick-ass. So, yeah, I like Don Ko more than I like Bandoleros. I like them both, but I would just have to say I feel like the energy of Don Ko would be the song I'd be listening to way more. Definitely a song to kind of get crunk and easy kind of weekend song. Definitely midnight kind of song, dancing kind of song, and easily, play this around women kind of song, and just gets things started. I really, like I said, because of this song, Don Ko, but then also the catchiness of Bandoleros also, I kind of found myself saying that they probably should have had a third single. But the fact that this was just a compilation and this was just kind of like a primer for Don Omar's next project, it still is pretty solid. There were 2 singles on here. So it's good, but it just leaves you hungry for more in a lot of ways. That's what you have to understand. But I'm going to give this album a 10 out of 10. I felt like it was outstanding. I would almost give it a 9.5, but because I like both these songs, I just feel like I'm just going to layer it to the catchiness and say that, hell yeah, it's worth it. But, I mean, obviously it would have easily gotten a 10 out of 10 if there had been one more single, and I had liked that also. But just for what it is, both these singles kick ass. They're catchy enough, and I would listen to both of these. despite not speaking the language, I could see myself listening to these and returning to them a number of times. That's pretty kick-ass that would go on to happen. So that's kind of the concept. The social score is kind of the same thing. These are both outgoing and kind of more evening slash nighttime songs. So easily kind of moments to kind of get things going. And if you know the rest of the album, there might be more hits like this because Don Omar is actually on Los Bandoleros more often. So that's just kind of the thing there, is just to say there might be some more boilers on there. That's what I kind of felt like as far as that kind of went. So it's interesting enough. And supposedly Don Omar is working on new music. We'll see what happens. But this is definitely some pretty top notch 2 hit singles that really help bolster Don Omar's hit catalog.